Ahsoka, why did you leave?
You abandoned me!
Do you know what I've become?
Star Wars The Clone Wars is beloved by many as a symbol of Star Wars at its best. The show features surprisingly deep themes and shows the depth and gravity of the largest war scene in all of the Star Wars films. Yet, there are still many who see the cartoonish animation style and cast of original characters created for the show and naively assume that The Clone Wars is a kids' show. Heck, I was one of those critics myself once, but to those people, including my past self, I have one question. Have you seen The Clone Wars? And by that, I don't just mean have you seen one episode, because let's face it, there are some episodes that are purely just for fun. The episode where R2-D2 and C-3PO act out various scenes from stories like Gulliver's Travels is one of them. But no, I mean, have you actually sat down and watched The Clone Wars as a whole? Because this show is intense. The Clone Wars deals with a surprising amount of really deep and heavy themes. And no, I'm not just talking about the violence, but I mean really heavy themes. Like, okay, maybe you'd expect to deal with some death and the mourning of loss, not just casual death, but like actually sitting down and realizing what it's like to live a life without someone who died, and maybe even ask the question of what it takes to be virtuous, or how to be good people, or the question of how is it that there are good people who do bad things, or maybe bad people who can do good, or maybe the show can demonstrate that there is such a thing as a noble person who is on the side of evil. Maybe you somehow even expected the show to deal with issues such as illicit narcotics, blood sports, the sexual harassment of underage women, and human trafficking.
I rather doubt it.
So without further ado, here are 10 times The Clone Wars was dealing with themes that were absolutely and demonstrably more appreciated by adults.
Subjects of this age rarely survive the slave conditioning procedure.
I'm afraid the risk is necessary.
The first is from the episode The Children of the Force, where Cad Bane kidnaps children. Yeah, that's a thing. Child kidnapping. In Star Wars. Not just child kidnapping, the kidnapping of children who are already set to be given up by their parents to join the Jedi Order are kidnapped by Cad Bane and brought to Palpatine so that he can torture them to become dark side monsters. Even though they're not successful, the theme is absolutely there, The Clone Wars, and certainly not something that you'd expect in something that would be deemed by most as a kids show. Nah, this is the kidnapping of children and the torture of them so that they can become so traumatized and monstrously malshaped in their psychology that they literally become killing machines. Kids show, maybe not. But man, it gets worse.
Betrothed. Little skinny, isn't she?
For instance, in the episode A Friend in Need, the first time that the famous characters Ahsoka and Bo-Katan meet each other, that is not what I would call a safe for work nor appropriate meeting. Well, Ahsoka and Bo-Katan would both grow to become household names, for the most part, for anyone who'd seen The Mandalorian. Their meeting was certainly not something that I would let my children see without explaining to them some things. You see, when Bo-Katan first meets Ahsoka, she's actually there to meet with Ahsoka's crush, but also separatist defector, but they're never really together, Lux Bonteri. And when Lux meets Bo-Katan, Bo-Katan wants to know what the heck Ahsoka's doing here, wherein Ahsoka interjects to say that she is Lux Bonteri's betrothed. And Bo-Katan proceeds to size up Ahsoka as if she were Lux's sex toy.
Betrothed. Little skinny, isn't she?
And the best part is that Lux's response is,
She serves a purpose.
how on earth is this not raising red flags to people? It is one of the craziest scenes because, well, it's straight up a grown woman smacking an underage girl on her rear end and sizing her up as if she is some sort of plaything for Lux Bonteri. This ranks pretty highly for me in the not made for kids category.
And now, the perfect tool for my vengeance is in front of us. I never planned on killing you, but I will make you share my pain.
The next one is not nearly as grotesque, but something that was still really emotionally heavy, and that was the death of Satine Crease. Duchess Satine Crease, for those of you who don't remember, was the love interest of Obi-Wan Kenobi, even though he couldn't be with her because he was so dedicated to the Jedi Code. But her death was something that was really heavy and really traumatic, and it was not just a casual cartoon death, but something that was a really deep and impactful moment for the show, especially given the depth of Maul's character as he was explored by the amazing voice actor Sam Witwer.
Find him. Find him. Fives. Find him! Find!
And sort of on those same lines would be the moment where Captain Rex turns on Ahsoka. This moment here was just so painful. Now, it's not to say that kids shouldn't be watching this or can't watch this. This isn't inappropriate for children, but the heaviness of this was certainly not made for kids. It's a gravity and a depth of betrayal and pain and being forced to do something you don't want that most kids might not yet understand. And certainly having this in their brains when they grow older will be something to which they can relate, but this was something that was made to be appreciated by people who have been through something really, really difficult and really painful. The betrayal of someone who was a close and trusted friend for a really long time is all he says is, find fives, which is, you know, abstracted, basically saying, I don't want to do what I am doing. Please find the thing that will show you the truth. Find the thing that will let us out of this trap.
Stand down, soldier! Stand down! Get on your knees! No! Stay back! Push! No!
And speaking of that, the death of Fives was another one of those really, really heavy moments where it's a character who's coming to terms with the fact that the purpose for which he was created is not what he thought, that he was created for something dark and evil. And the idea of growing up and realizing that you're part of an institution that is evil or monstrous or totalitarian is something that's really hard to grapple with and really emotionally deep and heavy, but it is something that a lot of us come to with the jobs that we have or the employment or the employers or even some of us, the governments under which we are subject. And that's not something with which kids usually relate. So this is something that I think resonates a lot more deeply with adults. And it's for that reason that it's here on this list.
The slave is certainly of fine stock. Bruno always knew how to choose a beautiful female.
At number 6, we've got another one of the topics that are mildly unsuitable for children, and that is the entire arc of the Zygerian slavers.
Slavery is a natural order of things. The weak deserve nothing more than to kneel before the strong, bound to our service.
Yeah, that was a pretty crazy one. See, the Zygerian slavers was an entire race of people who enslaved other species and, you know, captured them and made them serve as slaves. And there's a whole 3-episode arc where Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan are captured and used as slaves by this empire. And the Queen's interest in Anakin in particular strikes me as a bit above the heads of children, as it's clear that her interest in him is of the mildly seductive nature.
No! I won't go back there!
Wait! Stop!
Such a waste.
We were taken by those foul lizards for their amusement, to be hunted, killed, and mounted on their wall as trophies.
The next one on this list would be the Trandoshan Hunters in the episodes Padawan Lost and Wookiee Hunt. This arc sees a group of Trandoshans as they try to hunt living, sentient, and sapient children for sport. And this also includes the hunting of Chewbacca, as well as a group of Jedi younglings and many others who tragically don't survive the arc. Because yeah, the Trandoshans are a race of lizard people who literally hunt other people because they think it's fun, and then they skin them and hang their corpses on the wall. You will literally see the lifeless corpses of skinned Wookiees and other sapient creatures just paraded around in this episode because that's the type of thing that happens in a kids show, apparently.
We feast, prepare the food, Your masters are hungry.
At our next entry in the list, we are going back to the episode A Friend in Need, because after Bo-Katan sizes up Lox Bontari's latest little plaything, we get to see that the women native to the planet of Karlak have been imprisoned by Death Watch and are being used as domestic slaves, with some heavy emphasis on being service slaves, but a very decent implication that there is more going on.
You have taken our women, stolen our food, and threatened us for too long.
Yeah, this one definitely raised some adult eyebrows on a closer inspection.
Please, spare him. Take me.
Leave us.
Going back to the emotionally heavy side of things, we get to see the moment where Savage Opress is forced to kill his brother after passing the trials of the Night Sisters. This was a heavy moment because throughout the entire 2-episode arc, we see Savage Opress really looking after and protecting his younger brother and trying really hard to make sure that his brother is not the one who has his life taken from him and, you know, has to become something horrible. And so he sacrifices himself to save his brother, but of course, once he is victorious, he has his free will completely robbed of him and becomes this mindless monster, and his first act as mindless monster is being forced to kill the same brother that he was trying to protect. At honorable mentions, we have the abhorrent amount of violence in the show, which didn't make it officially on the list because, well, you know, kids shows have violence in them sometimes. The other one is all the episodes that are about politics, because those certainly aren't entertaining for kids. I know for a fact that my boys ask me to skip every single one of those episodes, but they're actually really interesting and deep and deal with actual political dichotomies, representing them for the most part relatively fairly. I think there's some slants here and there, but for the most part, they represent the difficulty of having to navigate through a political world where there are people who genuinely believe that what they're doing is the right thing on both sides. And it's represented very well in the show. Now, granted, there are some straw man episodes where you've got some very clear bad guys and some very clear good guys, but overall, I'd say that the political episodes of this show are definitely made in a way that they are more appreciated by those who have an idea of what's going on and how politics work. Finally, at the number 1 slot on this list, we have the time that Ahsoka buried the 332nd. And that is from the very end of the season finale for season 7 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. This was an incredibly heavy and emotional moment where Ahsoka had to bury all of her friends. And not only these were people who served with her for years, but people who turned on her in the last moments of their lives. And so there's this mix of guilt at being responsible for their deaths and having to fight and kill them, and at the same time, a loss of people who have served with you for years and years and years. And namely, the biggest name in that group would be Jesse, of course, who was a very influential part of the 501st Legion and one of the 2 main names in the 332nd. The only surviving member and the only other important person being, of course, Captain Rex. But anyway, guys, those were 10 times that the Clone Wars was absolutely not geared towards children. Whether it was inappropriate for children or simply made in such a way that it was more appreciated by adults, what do you think of this list? And was there any particularly adult moment that I may have missed? Leave your thoughts down in the comments below, because as always, I want to know what you, my friends, have to say about our favorite galaxy far, far away. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, or if you learned absolutely nothing new, you can feel free to leave a thumbs down, completely guilt-free, because that tells me I'm not doing my job. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, may the lore be with you, now and forever.